Welcome back. I'm Ian Masters, and this is Background Briefing, available 24/7 at backgroundbriefing.org. And joining us now, Dr. Ariel Cohen, who's a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center and a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's a recognized authority on international security and energy policy and a leading expert on Russia, Eurasia, and the Middle East. He's also a senior fellow at the International Tax and Investment Center, where he heads the Energy Growth and Security Program, and is the author of 6 books, among them Russian Imperialism, Development and Crisis, and Hour of Truth, The Conflict in Ukraine, Implications for Europe's Energy Security, and the Lessons for the U.S. Army. Welcome to Background Briefing, Dr. Ariel Cohen.
It's a pleasure.
Well, thanks for joining us. And you are a Russian dissident. Your close friend, Boris Nemtsov, who was the leader of the Russian opposition, was murdered on Putin's orders right outside the Kremlin. And you are close to others, prominent Russian dissidents like Vladimir Kara-Murza. So what do you make of the fact that the United States, ICE, is turning away Russians who have come here asking for asylum? And just a week ago, a young Russian, a 25-year-old former Russian serviceman who deserted his post in October 2022, Andrei Volchenko, was returned to Russia facing torture, imprisonment, who knows what. So
Well,
this is
first of all, yeah,
I'm saying this is
first of
really
all, yeah,
upsetting.
go ahead.
I'm saying this is deeply upsetting that this
Yes.
country that stands for freedom would send people back who come here seeking freedom and protection from dictators and a horrible war, would be sent back. Why? What is happening?
That's a very good question. First of all, I'll just qualify and say, because I left the Soviet Union as a teenager with my family, I don't qualify as a Russian dissident. I worked on Russia and Soviet-related subject all my life, for decades, and I was involved with international broadcasting, Radio Liberty, Voice of America, and yes, I knew not only Boris Nemtsov, who was murdered, but also Galina Starovoytova, a St. Petersburg-based activist, human rights defender, and a member of the Russian parliament who was also killed, and a number of other people that I met who got killed, which is, it really impinges on you. Somebody comes to your house, plays with your children, or you visit their home and have tea and cookies with them, or, dinners. I had numerous dinners with Boris Nemtsov, and then they are murdered in cold blood. But beyond that, over the years, I've done a number of expert opinions for courts in the United States, advocating for people who are asking for political asylum from that regime. This is the reason the United States exists. The pilgrims came from religious persecution in the 17th century England. Others came, the French Huguenots, the Poles, the Greeks, the Italians, the Jews, the Irish. Everybody came here because they were running away from regimes that were more brutal, more vicious, less free than what we have here. For me, as a lifelong scholar of Russia, a person who grew up there, who lost his grandfather to Stalin's secret police, the NKVD. He was executed in 1938 when my father was 9 years old. My aunt was 6 months old. For somebody like myself who knows these things firsthand, who has it as a part of family history, it is incredible and unbelievable that we'll pick up an engineer, a space scientist, or a conscientious objector to Russian war in Ukraine, and put them on a plane cuff them, tie them to the seat, and then hand them over to the Russian secret police, who would then interrogate them and possibly beat them or put them under pressure, etc. And the other question I have, beyond the moral and the legal questions, because I think we are violating our own laws in not allowing these people to go through the legal process of asylum. Uh, what are we getting for that? Why there was an agreement to turn these people, and I understand there were at least two plane loads of people, so hundreds of people. Why are we turning them over to Putin? Uh, what is Putin giving to us? Putin is not stopping the war in Ukraine. President Trump today was venting his frustration with Putin, talking about the souls of soldiers that are killed on both sides, the Russian side and the Ukrainian side. But let's remember, Russia invaded Ukraine, not the other way around. So Russia is the aggressor, and we're not getting what the president wants, which is to stop this brutal war.
Right, but Trump keeps saying he's disappointed in Putin, but he doesn't do anything about it.
We shall see. He said that they are in consultations. They are, meaning the administration, and I hope they are, because it should not be a decision of one man. There is in Washington, where I'm based, something called the interagency process, meaning that the National Security Council coordinates the decisions when it comes to hefty matters of foreign policy, and there are very few matters less hefty than the Russian-Ukrainian war and the Russian bid to enhance its influence in Europe, in Eastern Hemisphere, and therefore around the world. Russia is supported by China, the arch competitor, the arch enemy of the United States, according to Mr. Trump himself. So there should be an interagency process. There should be deliberations in which the State Department, the Defense Department, the intelligence community, the Treasury, and such are involved, and maybe inviting outside experts who spend their lives studying Russia, and make decisions about our position on the Ukraine war, on relationship with Russia, but also that it is wrong morally and policy-wise to load genuine political asylum people. These are not people who come here for economic reasons. These are not people who come here with all my sympathy because of an issue such as domestic violence or their sexual orientation. These are people who come here for political reasons, and according to the US law, they fully deserve to be heard by our immigration authorities and by a court, an immigration court, if for some reason the immigration authority turns them down. In my experience as a subject matter expert for courts, no case that I was a part of was turned down and asylum was denied. Of course, the policy is changing. The tectonic plates of our immigration policy are shifting. I'm not going to make pronouncements about the overall policy, but I can tell you that in case of Russia, in case of other post-Soviet states, something that I am intimately familiar with, both currently and historically, these people should have their case heard by the courts.
Well, only a week ago, on August the 27th, a plane load of 50 Russians was flown into Cairo, Egypt, and then they were transferred to a Russian plane by Egyptian authorities, including this young former Russian serviceman who deserted his post in October of 2022.
Which is when the war was escalating, yes.
Right, and he literally didn't resisted being put on the Russian plane. The Egyptians literally tied him to the seat. He wept all the way to Moscow, and then, of course, was met by the FSB, the secret police. But prior to that, these people, these Russians, emigres trying to get political asylum, they had a miserable time in American prisons, in these detention centers, where the conditions are horrendous and probably not dissimilar to conditions in Russian prisons. So this is what I just find so upsetting is that, what do we stand for anymore? I mean, surely Trump saw what happened yesterday in Beijing with Xi Jinping standing next to Putin and Kim Jong Un and all of the others, like that crook from Zimbabwe and other despots, and they're all feeling their oats, and they're all sort of laughing at him, and these people could be ruling the world before we know it.
Well, I was thinking exactly about that. What China, which has its own vision for the world, is talking about now is the mega market, they call it, the market that will compete with the West and the ones that you mentioned, the Russians, the Zimbabweans. I would add another paragon of freedom, Iran. Of course, I'm speaking sarcastically because in Iran, women are beaten for not wearing the hijab just right. The police to promote virtue and punish the evil. The moral police, the morality police, arrests women who don't cover or don't even put the hijab right. So they are the part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which, as one of my Chinese colleagues said, it's not Shanghai, it's not cooperation, and it's not organized. It's based in Beijing. It's run by the Chinese, and it's pretty much top-down, China-led global organization. And people who try to support freedom, to escape from a country like North Korea, country like Iran, country like Russia today, unfortunately, because Russia had a great promise after 1991, after Mikhail Gorbachev was unsuccessfully dethroned in a coup, and then the Soviet Union collapsed and Boris Yeltsin came to power. There was a promise of democracy for about 10 years. And then, of course, with Mr. Putin, who is a grad of one of the worst secret police organization in the world, the KGB, came to power very methodically, very slowly, I must say. He was folding the achievements of democracy, and he started also killing his opponents. We mentioned Boris Nemtsov. I would also mention Alexei Navalny, the last great leader of the Russian opposition, who apparently was on the list to be negotiated out of Russia, to be exchanged for some Russian spies and assassins. And the Biden administration, the Germans were dragging their feet. And he was probably killed in this Arctic freezing jail. We don't want people to be subjected to that fate. Not in Russia, not in Iran, not in North Korea. And while there are concerns, the system, I worked with the system, the immigration system, for years, from maybe the Bush Jr. years, from Bush 43 years through Obama, Trump 1, and Biden. The system was broken, clearly. It would take years and years for people's appeals to be heard. Some of the people were detained, but should not include, for example, taking a 59-year-old depressed Russian space engineer and putting her in a privately run detention center without proper medical care, a report I just read. And by the way, it looks like promises were made to that woman that then were not kept. and I don't want to go into too much detail, but you can imagine that a Russian space engineer knows a lot of stuff about the Russian space program. For example, there was another case at Harvard where a Russian PhD researcher in biosciences was about to be put on a plane and shipped to Russia. She was an opponent of Putin's war in Ukraine. And she begged to be sent to France because, as a PhD bioscientist, she was having a collaborative relationship with Institut Pasteur in Paris, one of the leading biology and microbiology research institutions around the world. No, said our authorities, we're going to arrest her. We're going to put her on a plane and send her back to Putin. And she was absolutely horrified. In the end, her lawyers and the Sakharov Foundation got her, for now, what looks like got her off the hook. But again, what are we doing here? We have PhD level people, educated people who never committed a criminal offense in their lives, being denied asylum when these are legitimate asylum cases, and when they demonstrate well-established fear of persecution, and they have the documents, they have the evidence, they have the witnesses that their cases are legitimate. It's a waste of taxpayers' resources to put them in detention where their life can be in danger or their health can deteriorate. And also, as Putin is not playing ball with us, why handing a win to Putin?
And just in closing, Ariel, on Wednesday, the leading Russian opposition figures, Yulia Navalnaya, Vladimir Kara-Murza, and Ilya Yashin, issued a joint statement calling on the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, to grant asylum to Russians facing deportation from the United States. And the fact that our neighbor in Canada has to do the right thing while our disgraceful government is doing such horrible things is such an embarrassment. And I thank you for joining us here today.
Of course, my pleasure.
And I've been speaking with Dr. Ariel Cohen, a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center and a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's a recognized authority on international security and energy policy and a leading expert on Russia, Eurasia, and the Middle East. He's also a senior fellow at the International Tax and Investment Center, where he heads the Energy Growth and Security Program, and is the author of 6 books, including Russian Imperialism, Development and Crisis, and Hour of Truth, the conflict in Ukraine, implications for Europe's energy security, and the lessons for the U.S. Army.